Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to my distinguished colleague from Florida, Mr. Gates. And I also want to thank my colleagues, Mr. James and Mr. Zinke, for they, like myself, are combat veterans who understand the total cost of warfare. Now, before I get into my statement, I want to address a couple of things that was made by my colleagues here today. We talked about the idea that we are here to preserve freedoms and we are here to preserve democracy. But let's talk about our role in democracy. When we went into Iraq in 2003 under the auspice that we were there for weapons of mass destruction and to liberate the people of Iraq, only 2 years later did we supplement this with the 2005 Iraq Constitution, whereby Article 76, in its own design, created sectarian democracy that gave rise to the Iranian control, which ultimately gave rise to China's domination. You know, we are not a nation-building element. We are war fighters. We are there to conduct counterterrorism operations when needed, but only at the expense that it is to the benefits of the American national security and U.S. interests. Now, he talked about timely, but I ask you, Mr. Speaker, we started our operations in Mogadishu in the early 90s. We started the operations in Afghanistan in 2001. We started the operations in Iraq in 2003. So by what definition do we determine is timely? You know, the idea that my colleague, and rightfully so, and I agree with him, Mr. James, said about the repeal and replace piece of the AUMF, which I do view as an abdication of our roles and responsibilities as legislators under the Constitution, Article 1, Clause 8. But it does have a replacement, and I just stated it, and it's called the United States Constitution War Authorities. At no point in time can you find in the Constitution whereby it says we can repeal our rights as legislators under the Constitution to put in something which abdicates our roles and responsibilities for 20-plus years on an AUMF that was designed and now being abused by presidents on the left and the right who have been using it for its non-intended purposes. And while I agree with my colleague, Mr. Gates, that Afghanistan is completely not relevant to the discussion that was made, we're talking about an area whereby President Biden utilized political optics over military strategy, endangering the lives of our military when we know that it was a conditions-based withdrawal. But one thing was actually stated as correct, which is the threat in which China possesses when it comes to the Africa continent, and that a vacuum could be created. But let's go ahead and focus on what China's ultimate goal is, because it is not kinetics. It is not about the bomb-to-bomb, gun-to-gun, or bullet-to-bullet mechanism. It is about the economic and resource warfare impact. It is about the Belt and Road Initiative, which expands out the Eurasian border, takes over Africa, Oceania, cuts off Western Hemisphere supply chain, in an effort to utilize the WHO, WEF, and OPEC to eliminate the U.S. dollar from the global currency. So let's address that issue, which is not one that is done by kinetics and warfighters, but by a whole-of-nation approach that deals with treasury, that deals with the economic build-out, that deals with strengthening the industrial base at home, that stops the reliance on the very adversaries that we pay to slap us around every day. And this idea that we're going to play this terrorist Whac-A-Mole, where every time one pops up we send a new force, does nothing to actually try and help with stabilization. And let's talk about our interactions. We had a terrorist organization known as the Al-Qaeda Arabian Peninsula that was based in a small portion in the Gulf of Aden, out in Yemen. And it wasn't until our drone strikes that caused numerous civilian casualties that did we not play right into the ideology that Americans are here to destroy us and kill us due to our religious beliefs. We were actually the reason that Al-Qaeda Arabian Peninsula continued to grow. And my colleague on the left, who I have a great deal of respect for, and we sit on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. Meeks, he talks about the fact that we've had no Americans killed in Somalia, but that's absolutely false. And in fact, we just had another soldier killed in 2018 as a result of an explosion that resulted in 3 more. And also in 2017, where we had 3 more killed that was there. You know, as someone who has had to go visit Arlington Cemetery on many occasions to see my brothers that are no longer here with me today, I don't think that we need to spare one more life of American bloodshed in an effort that we don't have a clear strategic military objective to begin with. And so I ask that we look at not being isolationists, as we're always called and considered, but also not interventionists. Our goal is to be protectionists. Protection of our constitutional rights, our sovereignty, and the American people. That is our role. And we keep talking about this 2001 AUMF that we were to repeal. Well, let's go through this. In 2019, the amendment to the 2020 NDA to repeal the 2002 AUMF was stripped out in its final version. In November 14th of 2018, the resolution introduced to assert Congress's war power authorities in Yemen, the Rules Committee stripped the resolution in its procedural privilege. And then soon after, the Rules Committee stripped privilege from all war power resolutions for the remainder of the 115th Congress. We keep talking about what we're going to do, but I've seen very little action. And see, this is one of the reasons that I ran for Congress, because there's too many politicians who like to talk and not enough statesmen who are willing to act. And I know a little thing about action, considering that between my military and government experience, I've spent over 7 years of my life in Iraq, almost 3 years of my life in Afghanistan, Kosovo, Pakistan, and guess what? Northern Somalia and the Puntland areas of Hargeisa and Berbera. I can tell you very clearly that what we are doing right now in our procedures is not making us safer, and we must start to look at a real change in order to try and protect America, stop abdicating our roles and responsibilities, and start leading from the front. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from